Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we begin the very last Mishnah, Masechta Bava Metzia, the second Mishnah on Daf Kuf Yud Ches Samud Beis. Sagt the Heilige Mishnah, Shtei Ginois Zu al Gav Zu. Two gardens that are positioned, one that's higher than the other. These are two neighbors that live side by side, and one property is further down, and there's a wall between the two properties, and then there's a garden that's on the bottom property, and there's a garden that's on the property right near it, further up. V'hayerek beintayim. And there are vegetables that are growing on the wall that there is between the two properties. So there's sort of this wall or this steep slope between the two properties, and right there you have vegetables growing. Who do these vegetables belong to? Rab Meir says, Shal Elyon. It belongs to the upper property. Rab Yehuda Shal Tachten. Rab Yehuda says it belongs to the lower property. So here the Mishnah brings a discussion between Rab Meir and Rab Yehuda explaining the reasoning of their opinion. Rab Meir said, if the one from the upper property wants to take his earth away, ein kan yerek. There's no vegetables that can grow. They're growing out of the earth of his property. So it belongs to him. Rab Yehuda says about this, no, the other way around. If the one living in the lower property wants to fill his garden with earth, then ein kan yerek. There'll be no vegetables here. The vegetables need the airspace to grow. They're growing out into the airspace of the lower property. So therefore it belongs to the Tachten. So Rab Meir responds to this argument of Rab Yehuda and says, so since, as you see here, that according to both reasonings, that they both can stop the growth of these vegetables, the upper one by taking away his earth and the lower one by filling up the airspace with earth. So how do we conclude regarding this matter? So we have to see from where does this vegetable actually take its nourishment, where does it actually grow from? So since it's actually growing from the earth, from the upper property, it belongs to him. Rab Shimon said, the third opinion here, whatever vegetables that grow here on this wall of the property, so the one from the upper property could stretch out his hands and reach those vegetables, that belongs to him. But the rest that grow further down and he can't reach it, that's going to belong to the lower property. So Rashi's pshat in the opinion of Rab Shimon is that in essence, Rab Shimon agrees to what Rab Meir says, that you have to look at from where this vegetable is growing. And it's growing from the top property, so really it belongs to him. That's Rab Shimon's opinion, like Rab Meir. Elamai, Rab Shimon adds, if it's too far down for him to reach it, so true, it should belong to him, but in order for him to actually get it, what is he going to have to do? He's going to have to go down and go and knock on the door of the person that lives on the lower property and ask him for permission to enter, to go and take that vegetable. So Rashi says it's a gnai for him. He's not interested in this bother and this annoyance to have to go and ask him for this. So therefore he's mafkirit, he gives up on the vegetables that are too low down on the wall of this property, and he gives it up, and therefore that part of Tachten will keep. That's the way Rashi explains Rab Shimon's opinion. So Rab Shimon's opinion is based on Rab Meir's opinion that be'etzem it really should be belonging to the Elyon, to the one that's in the upper property. But the Ramban though disagrees. The Ramban says no, actually the basis of Rab Shimon's opinion is the exact opposite. Rab Shimon holds that really the right owner for these vegetables are the one that lives on the bottom property. Elamai, the ones that the top property can reach and take, the one that lives in the bottom property, he gives up on it. Because he knows that if he's going to demand from the one that lives on the top that I'm going to take those vegetables, so what's the one on the top going to do? He's going to take away his earth. He's going to make sure that the one on the bottom shouldn't get it. So he doesn't want to get into a fight with the one that's living on the top. So therefore, the ones that are closer up to him, he gives up on it, he's mafkir it, and therefore that it belongs to the Elyon. So according to the Ramban, it's the exact opposite. Rab Shimon be'etzem holds like Rab Yehuda, Elamai, the ones that are close enough to the Elyon, he gives up on that. Omar Rava, so Rava said here about this machlokes be'ikroi, when you're talking about the roots of these vegetables, everybody agrees that it belongs to the one that lives in the upper property, because it's inside the earth itself, and the earth it belongs to the upper, it's his earth of the upper property. What's the argument here? The branches or the leaves that grow out from these vegetables. Rab Meir's opinion is shadi noifai baseikroi, that the leaves have the status like the roots. They follow, they go after the status of the roots itself. So therefore belongs to the Elyon, to the one in the upper property. Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that even though the roots belong to the Elyon, but since the leaves grow out into the airspace of the Tachton, so therefore they have a different status. The roots belong to the Elyon, and the leaves or the branches that grow out belong to the Tachton. It's two different things, two separate things. There's a Gemara over there on the shelf over there if you want to grab a Gemara. Okay, we're finishing right now. Okay, so interesting. The Gemara over here brings this svara of Shadi Noife Basa Ikrai and so on. The Rebbe in the Hadron that the Rebbe said on the Siyum of Masechta Bava Metzia, which was at the Farbrengen of Yutes Kislev Tavshin Chavav. So the Rebbe there said that it's interesting because it seems like the Gemara is giving a different reasoning than what it said in the Mishnah. In the Mishnah it said that the reason over here is how is the yerek growing? Is this vegetable growing from the earth and therefore the earth belongs to the Elyon? Or do we say no, the vegetables need the airspace in order to grow, so therefore belongs to the Tachton, to the lower property? The Gemara seems to be saying a different reasoning. Whether you say Shadi Noifei Basa Ikrai, that the leaves follow the roots or not, two different reasons over here. So the Rebbe says that, the Rebbe proves it from the Rambam, that the Ikr reason is what it says in the Mishnah. That you have to, the question is, what's the main source of the growth? Is it the earth or is it the airspace? The svara that the Gemara brings over here, whether you say Shadi Noifi Basa Ikrai, that's only after you see the Ikr reason of the Mishnah. But this is not the Ikr reason. Because mitzad, if it would just be the inyan of Shadi Noifi Basa Ikrai, and there wouldn't be a question where the main growth of even the knife is. Do I say that the knife needs the airspace, or do I say no, the knife needs the Ikr, which is growing inside the earth? Just the svara of Shadi Noifi Basa Ikrai itself, the Rebbe brings from the Gemara, we had a few blot before, where the Gemara talks about a tree that's growing right on the border of a property. And in the ground itself, it's actually taking nourishment from both people that are neighbors here, because it's growing right on the border. But there, the Gemara says that maybe you should look at the knife. Where do the branches hang over? Is it hanging over into the property on the right or on the left? And if you say Shadi Noife Basa Ikrai, so over there the halacha is going to be Yachloiku, because the Ikr is in both properties. Over there you say that it belongs to both of them. If you say Shadi Noife Basa Ikrai, then the halacha is Yachloiku. That's what you see over there. Now, in a case of a tree, it's not shaykh to come and say that you're going to take away the earth or you're going to fill up the earth. The tree is growing on the border, and the earth that belongs to both of them. Nobody could take away the earth. And by a tree that's on a level property, it's not shaykh to say that anyone's going to fill up the earth. So over there it's pashut. Over there the halacha is that you say Shadi Noifi Basa Ikrai. Over here, the only reason why there is a machlekes, whether you should or should not say Shadi Noifi Basa Ikrai, is because of the svaras of the Mishnah. Because of what the Mishnah says, that this person has the full right to pull away his earth, or the other person has the full rights to fill up the area with earth. So that's really the main basis of the whole machlokes, whether you should b'chlal say Shadi Noifi Basa Ikrai, because this is a situation where each one could just pull it out or cause that it should not grow anymore. That's the understanding of this Gemara. This is one nekudah that the Rebbe said in the Hadron over here in the Masechta. Tavshin Chavav, the Farbrengen Yutes Kislev Tavshin Chavav. The Gemara continues and says, Va'azda letamayu, or there's another gersa here because it's not really a brayse that the Gemara brings that's the same reasoning exactly. So there's another gersa you have on the side. V'tanya nami gabi mekach umemke kai gavna. There's a similar argument between Rab Meir and Rab Yehuda regarding a sale. The Tanya, as we learned in the brayse, now what this brayse is talking about is when there's one person that owns the actual field itself, and there's another person that owns the tree in the field. And he just bought one tree. When you buy one tree, so then you don't get any space of the ground itself. You just own the fruits of the tree itself. But the field itself belongs to someone else. Mm-hmm. So in such a case,
3 trees.
Now here we're talking about one tree.
No,
if you have 3 trees, then you get space around it. But if you have one, so then you only own the tree itself. So there the Brayse says, Hayotzim and Ageza. If there's an additional growth of another sort of tree that's coming out of the trunk of this tree that's here, or if there's another tree that's growing out from the roots of this tree, so this new tree that's growing here, either way, belongs to the one that owns the field itself. Rab Meir, this is Rab Meir's reasoning. So what we see over here is, the point that Rab Meir is saying is that because the trunk of the tree, and even more so the roots of the tree, is all growing from the ground itself. So since the ground itself belongs to one person, the owner of that field will get the new tree that's growing out of this, the trunk or the roots of this tree. The person that bought the tree, he paid for, and his intention was to buy the tree. But a new tree that's growing out of this existing tree, that he didn't pay for, that he doesn't own. For that we say, similar to the svara that Rab Meir said before, Shadi Neifei Base Ikrai, that the trunk and the roots are all stemming from the ground, and therefore this new tree that's growing here will belong to the one that owns the ground. That's Rab Meir's opinion, similar to what he says before. Rabbi Yehuda, however, Rabbi Yehuda says there's a distinction. Mina geza shel bali ilon. What grows out of the trunk of the tree belongs to the owner of this tree. What's growing out of the roots of the tree, shel bala karka, that belongs to the owner of the ground. And Rashi says that the geza is anything that's above ground. Any part of this, the trunk of the tree that's exposed out of the surface of the ground, that's geza. Anything that's underground, that is considered to be shirashin. Now, similar, Otnanami, Gemara continues in Daf Kufyutes. Oh, there's another Gersei Tanya. This is really just a braisa. Similar halacha regarding Gabi Arla. Right, the halachas of Arla. Of course, the halacha of Arla is that the first 3 years you're not allowed to have any benefit from anything that grows from the tree. So Kahai Gavne, so there's a similar machlokes when you have a tree. Elon hayotze min hageza min hasharashim. So you already have an existing tree and it's already more than 3 years old. But now there's sort of a second tree that's growing out of the first original tree. So, according to Rab Meir, whether the second tree is growing out of the trunk of the first tree or it's growing out of the roots of the first tree, chayiv barla. It's going to be chayiv and arla divrei Rab Meir. Because again, according to Rab Meir, the point of here is this second tree that's growing is not considered to be like a branch of the first tree. It's a new tree that's growing here. So this new tree has the mitzvah of arla or the isser of arla for itself for 3 years. And it doesn't matter, even if it's growing not from the roots of the tree that are underground, even if it's growing from the trunk of the tree that's exposed above the ground, but it doesn't matter. Because the geza is shadi noifi basa ikrei. I say over here that the geza is considered to be like in the ground itself, and this new tree is like it's growing directly from the ground itself. So now the halacha of Arla, the first 3 years, will apply to this new tree. Rabbi Yehuda, divrei Rab Meir, that's Rab Meir's opinion. Rabbi Yehuda says, Mina geza potter. If it's growing from the trunk of the tree, so then you potter. Mina sharashin, if it's growing from the roots of the tree, then chayev. Then it's considered to be like a new tree that's growing from the ground itself. Now the Gemara explains, we basically see Rab Meir and Rabbi Yehuda argued about this subject, both regarding a case of ownership, who's the real owner of this new tree growing here, and regarding Arla. Why are they arguing about this twice? Says the Gemara, it's necessary to say their machlokes regarding both of these cases. The Yashmin and Kamaisa, if would say the machlokes only regarding the question of ownership, I would say, maybe there Rabbi Yehuda made a distinction that it depends where the new tree is growing from. If it's growing from the trunk or from the roots. It's a question of ownership of the money, who this new tree belongs to. So there it's logical to say that it depends if it's coming from the roots that are in the ground or if it's coming from the trunk of the tree. Arla, the Isura, but when it comes to Arla, here it's a question of the Isser, whether this tree for the first 3 years is Asr Bahana because it's considered to be like a new tree. Maybe here he agrees to Rab Meir that we have to be Machmer. We can see it looks like a brand new tree that's growing, it's not just a branch, and here you should be Machmer that there is a Isser of Arla. The same thing in the reverse. If we would only say the machlokes over here in this case regarding Arla, I would say Baha Kamer Rab Meir. Maybe Rab Meir only regarding Arla was he stringent and said this. Aval Bahahi, but over there when it comes to the halacha of the question of ownership, maybe I would say that he agrees to Rabbi Yehuda that we do make a distinction that you have to look at whether the tree is growing from the trunk or is growing from the roots of the tree that's inside the ground. So therefore we need to say this machlokes of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda in both of these cases, both regarding the question of money, regarding the ownership of this new tree that's growing here, and regarding the Isser of Arla. Gemara continues with the last opinion we had here in the Mishnah. Omer Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon says, Kol sha'elyon yochel livshoit v'chulu, that the halacha here is regarding the vegetables that grow on the wall between the property, the upper property and the lower property, that the one that's in the upper property, as far as his hands can stretch and reach, those are the vegetables that will belong to him. That's Rab Shimon's opinion. Amri debe Rab Yanai, so Rab Yanai explained this, Ubulvat shelo yenas. That's what he could reach easily. Not something that he has to stretch out his hands and literally risk his life to fall over in order to reach that. That's not going to belong to him. That's the halacha that Rabbi Yanai said. it's here from this point. I mentioned in the beginning that the Ramban has a different pshat than Rashi in the Mishnah. It's from this point that the Ramban asks on Rashi. According to Rashi's pshat, the whole basis of Rab Shimon's opinion is that he really holds like Rab Meir that says that it belongs to the person that's, again, he holds like Rab Meir, that says that it belongs to the person that's in the upper property. Right? So and the only reason Rab Shimon says that what he can't reach does not belong to him is because he's embarrassed to go knock on his door all the time. Give me the vegetables at the bottom that belong to me. So if that's the case, so the Ramban says, and if it's something which is very hard for him to go and take, but he'll go and take it. If he can take it, it's his. As long as he doesn't have to go and knock on the other person's door and embarrass himself to ask for it and to always have to annoy himself to go and get it, it should be his. Why does it make any difference? This is one of the questions that the Ramban asks on Rashi. There are Mefarshim that say that the way Rashi understands this is, if the person in the upper property is going to be taking vegetables that are pretty low down, and he has to mamish risk his life and bend over very far to get it, so then there's going to be a chashad. There'll be a suspicion that he went in the middle of the night and came down and went into his property without permission and took it. So therefore, that those vegetables that are so far down, he doesn't want to take, so there should be no suspicion against him, there should be no arguments against him that you went and stole from me. So that's why he gives up on that. Boy, Ravanan v'teimer Rab Yirmiyah. Ravanan or Rab Yirmiyah asked the shaila, Magia le'noifoi ve'e magia le'ikroi. What's if this person can reach out and he can reach the leaves the way they grow? If the leaves are growing sort of in an going upward direction, so he can reach the leaves. But ve'e magia le'ikroi, he can't reach the roots. Or magia le'ikroi, he can reach the roots. Ve'e magia le'noifoi, but he can't reach the leaves that are growing downward. What's the halach in such a case? And the Gemara here doesn't take it. The Gemara says this remains unresolved. It's also, this shaila of the Gemara is also not so easy to understand. If either way he can reach it, so then what difference does it make if he could only reach the leaves or he could only reach the roots? The fact is he can reach it. So then it should be his. So one of the pshatim that it says in Mefarshim is based on the point that I said before, that this person is not interested in taking anything that will cause a fight or will cause a suspicion that he became a ganav. So if the knife is hanging very far down, even if it's possible for him to grab hold of the roots, but because the leaves of it go very far down, so it's going to become a suspicion that he stole it from the person that's on the downstairs property. And the same thing in the opposite. So this is also because the reason the person doesn't want to get into any fights. That's the svara the Gemara has about this. Teiku, so as I mentioned, the Gemara does not answer this. Omar Rafram Safre Talmidei Shel Reish Lakish, Hafraim, sorry. Omar Hafraim Safre Talmidei Shel Reish Lakish. Hafraim, the scribe that was a student of Reish Lakish, said Mishum Reish Lakish, in the name of his teacher Reish Lakish, Halacha Kerab Shimon. In this case, we paskin like Rab Shimon that whatever grows close enough to the upper property is his, and whatever he can't reach belongs to the one in the lower property. Amrua Kamei the Shvar Malka. They said this psakdin in the presence of Shvar Malka. Who was Shvar Malka? So Rashi says Shvar Malka refers to the Persian king, Shvar, the Persian king. And why are they saying these halachas in front of the Persian king? So Rashi he brings that he was a baki in halachas, and he knew many of these halachas. Taisus here brings not only did he know halachas that pertains to money matters, which is not so surprising. He learned and knew the halachas regarding these things, but he even knew halachas of Isser v'Heter as well. When it came to a situation where there was a knife, how to kasher the knife, he stuck it into the ground 10 times to kasher the knife. He knew all these halachas that it says in Torah. So they said that this halach in front of Shvar Malka. This is the main pshat Rashi says. There is though another pshat that Rashi brings, another Rishonim say as well, that Shvar Malka was a nickname for Shmuel. And that this halacha was said in front of Shmuel. That's what it refers to. But Rashi does not accept that pshat. Rashi says Shmuel knew this halacha on his own. He didn't need the student of Reish Lakish to let him know this halacha. So they told him this halacha like Rab Shimon, and Omar Luhu Shvar Malka responded and said, Apiryoin namte le Rab Shimon. Rashi's pshat of Apiryoin is, our grace is towards Rab Shimon for saying such a beautiful halacha. Apiryan means chen, grace. Another pshat that the Ramban says, Apiryan means our praise, that we praise Rab Shimon for this halacha that he said over here. Hadron Allah, Chabayis va'aliyah, Aslikala, Masechta, Bava Metzia. Okay, Mazel Tov everyone. Conclusion of the Masechta.
It's in the Neshama Meir Barak Ben Lev. That's it.
Shama Shnav and Aliyah. Amen. Hadron Allah Masechta Bava Metzia, Hadron Chalon, Daitan Allah Masechta Bava Metzia, Daitan Chalon, License Nashim Allah Masechta Bava Metzia, Daitan Chalon, Hadron Allah Masechta Bava Metzia. Hadar Chalan, Dait Lam Masach Bava Metzia, Dait Chalan, it's Nashma Masach Bava Metzia, and we're Bamadasi. Okay, before I say the whole rest of the Hiratz in there, I'll just share with you a beautiful vart that the Rebbe said in a Hadrin, mentioned the Hadrin the Rebbe made on this Masechta was Yutes Kislev, Tavshin Chavav. Tavshin Chavav, 1966. Well, it depends actually if it was, yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, but it's recorded. You can listen to it. It's beautiful to listen to. So the Rebbe then mentioned that there's a Hadron really from the Tzemach Tzedek. The Rebbe only said a portion of it. There's another portion that the Rebbe didn't mention all the details of it. In the Tzemach Tzedek, the Hadron that the Tzemach Tzedek said on the Masechta is mamish, a beautiful, beautiful explanation of this Mishnah of the two gardens which has the vegetables that are growing in the wall in between. What is this referring to? So first the Tzemach Tzedek says what this is referring to is Gan Eden Elyon and Gan Eden Tachten. That's what we're talking about over here. And the Yerek that's in between is that level that you have to go through to get from Gan Eden Tachten to Gan Eden Elyon. It says, as it says, that in between Gan Eden Tachten and Gan Eden Elyon, there's a Nahar Dinur. There's a process you have to go through a fiery river to get to Gan Eden Elyon. But then he explains how that applies to us here living in this world. Just like there's a Gan Eden Tachten, Gan Eden Elyon, it's the same in the life of a person that you have a Nefesh L'kis and a Nefesh Bahamas. And there's the pleasures of the Tachten, which is what the Nefesh Bahamas desires, and the pleasures of the world. And there's the Gan Eden Elyon, which is the pleasures of the Neshama, of what the Neshama is interested in. And that, he says that the Yerek that's growing in between is the things that are the Mamutza, all the Dvarim HaMutarim in the world. Or as the Alter Rebbe refers to it in Tanya, all of Klippas Naika, all the food and all the activity, everything we do in the world which is totally permissible. And it's in between. What does it mean that it's in between? It could either be utilized in the positive, and therefore it could become part of the Elyon, it could be elevated and be used to serve Hashem, like for Nefesh L'kis, which is in the upper property, or it could be utilized in the negative. It could be utilized in the negative way, where a person is doing it all for selfish motives, and then it becomes caught up by the Nefesh Bahamas, which is very selfish. And the Tzemach Tzedek brings a very Gishmak Taich, and what it says, benegay to the word Yerek. Yerek, he says, has three ways how you could combine the letters. Either Yerek, or Yokar, or Keri. So he says Yerek is usually green, some kind of green, and he says green is made up of white, has a whiteness of it, and a redness of it, which is a combination of the good and the bad, which is mixed into it. And if you use it in the positive, it becomes Yokar, it becomes precious, it becomes something which is valuable for your neshama. If you use it in the negative, it becomes Keri, it becomes something which is Keri, which is Tumah, which is impurity. And that's the Yerek that grows in between. So here, what the Mishnah is saying is, who does it belong to? Does it belong to the Elyon or does it belong to the Tachten? That's the argument between Rab Meir and Rab Yehuda. So he explains, what are they arguing about? Is there any question about this? Rab Yehuda is telling you that it belongs to the Tachten, that it belongs to the Nefesh Bahamas. What is this all about? So he says, no. Of course, the whole point of any interaction that a person has in Eilam Hazeh and all the food that a person eats should all be elevated to the neshama. However, what they're arguing is, how are you going to achieve that? So one opinion over here is, Rab Meir says that you go according to the standards of the Elyon, which means the neshama has the capacity to see and know the truth that this whole world is batal b'metzias, that this whole world doesn't exist, and he brings it, what we're learning now in Tanya, that Hashem creates the world every single moment, therefore the world really has no metzias for itself, and the neshama sees that and recognizes that, and with that clarity, when you sit down by food, so the person knows that it all belongs to Hashem. So he elevates it all for the Eibishter's sake. That's Rab Meir's approach. Rab Yehuda, though, says such a kind of approach of the neshama is very difficult for the average person to apply, because a person lives in this world and you see this world, and the view and the openness and the clarity the neshama sees is not so easy to attain. So therefore, Rab Yehuda says there's another way you can go about it. When a person thinks about the fact that everything in the world has to have a purpose, that you see things that exist in the world, and everything has to have a tayelis and a certain purpose, and the ultimate purpose of what everything exists for is that kol ma shebara kadosh baruch hu b'olam lebroi el l'chvaydai. That's something that even the Nefesh Bahamas could relate to on an easier level. It's even if you don't mamish see the bittul of the world the way the neshama sees it, but at least to have the recognition that the world has a purpose. The world has meaning. The world is connected to the Eibishter that created it. That level is something that even the Nefesh Bahamis could relate to. What Rabbi Yehuda says is that even the Tachtai, the Nefesh Bahamis itself, on his standards, in his level of understanding, could also realize and eat the yerek with his understanding and eat it for the proper purpose of what it's supposed to be eaten for in order to be able to serve Hashem. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. And he teaches there, Meir means when it's shining. Meir means light. When the neshama shines, so then the neshama sees the truth and has no problem with the world in any way being outside of Hashem's existence. Yehuda always means when a person is admitting to something that he's not yet fully there. You admit to something. When a person is living in Olam Haba and he sees the world as an entity for itself. But at least he can be maida. He understands that the world must have a purpose. The Eibishter created this world for a purpose. At least the Nefesh Bahamis could understand that. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Then he says, Rab Shimon, when Rab Shimon says it depends what your hands could reach, what is that referring to? So he says, how does a person know when he's actually eating if what he's eating is for a good purpose or not? So he says, look at where your mind is reaching to. If while a person's eating, he has good thoughts and machshavas of Torah or any good thoughts that are falling into his mind, he knows that that's the space that he's in. That's an indication that that's where his mind is in, and therefore the food is being elevated. If while he's eating, he finds himself thinking about things that are nonsense and things that have no connection to the purpose of his life, so then that means that his hands are not reaching, his mind is not there, and therefore the food that he's eating is not getting elevated. That's the indication of where a person's holding. And then he says, what's the very last point in the Masechta when it says that they said this halacha in front of Shvar Malka, and he said, Apir Yanam Tel Rab Shimon. So he says, Shvar Malka refers to Shviras HaKelim of Toyu. The creation of this world, the Gashmis of this world, as it explains the Chassidus, comes from the level of Shviras HaKelim of Toyu. Torah is above creation. Torah is kadma la'olam. If a person wants that his interaction with the world, and especially when a person is eating, it should be l'shem shemaim. So what do? You go to Torah, like it says in the Mishnah in Pirkei Yavis, that when a person eats, in order that his table should be a table that should be like a mizbeach. So then, if you have Torah with the food that you're eating, and that's what it means here, the kamei the shvar malka, before higher than shvar malka, the Torah that a person learns will give him the power to elevate the gashmis, the food that he eats in this world. That's the taich of this Mishnah, the way that Tzemach Tzedek teiches it.
Sure. Wow.
Yeah. Okay, l'chaim, everyone. Mazel tov on the Siyum. So we finish this Masechta. We should finish many more Masechtas in good health and bring only brachas to you, to your family, and to everything. Begashmis, beruchnius. Make a bracha. Now, you wanted to say something? Please share. You want to?
Anything prepared?
There's one more word that he says over there regarding the beginning of this whole perek. Actually, the name of the perek, Habayis for Ha'aliyah. This is the Rebbe spoke about this by Riches at the Fabrengen. What's this bias and aliyah? This is the bias and aliyah is what it says in the Medrash that the Beis Hamikdash, Yerushalayim, there's Yerushalayim Shel Maila and there's Yerushalayim Shel Mata. And the Medrash says that the Eibishter does not enter into Yerushalayim Shel Mata, into Yerushalayim Shel Maila, that is, until the Yidden enter into Yerushalayim Shel Mata. Right? That's the well-known Medrash. You mentioned this?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the word that Tzemach Tzedek is ma'arich barichas about this, that in order for the Eibishter to build the Beis Hamikdash, so the Gemara says has to be an oifen of Zachu. Zachu is when Yidden enter into Yerushalayim Shel Mata, and so here what happened is the Churban Beis Hamikdash. The Mishnah speaks about the house that collapsed. The upper floor collapsed, the bottom floor collapsed, Churban Beis Hamikdash, and now what has to happen? First, the one that's living in the downstairs floor, which is us. Here below in this world, we have to build the downstairs floor, and only then does the Eibishter enter in the Yerushalayim Shel Maila. But what happens if that doesn't happen? So then the Eibishter will bring Mashiach anyways. Loi Zachu, the Eibishter brings Mashiach in the time that he brings him. But then what happens is, because we didn't prepare ourselves and we didn't do anything for it, we don't have any connection to this, the revelation that exists. It's not anything that we can feel. We didn't do anything for it. So that's what the Mishnah says, that the Eibishter lives in the bias, the Eibishter moves into the bias Shel Mata, and we have no connection to this. So, but then though the Lufnim Meshuras Adin, the Rebbe there brings that the Eibishter nevertheless will allow Yidden to feel and to see the revelation of the Gula, even though Yidden weren't Zeichet to this. The Rebbe brings there a Medrash that explains this. Like upon him, that's the Teichen of right. Afal Pi Shebayna, even though the Eibishter built it, but nevertheless Nitche Yisrael Yechanes, the Eibishter gathers Yidden and allows them to feel the revelation of the Gula. Take it from the Yad Mamish. Yeah.
Where is this?
Yites Kislev Tashin Chavav. Eira Teire in Maimore Razal. There's a Sefer Eira Teire in Maimore Razal. Over there. The Vart of Habayis Valiyah though was never printed in Eira Teire.
The Rebbe says over there.
But the Rebbe goes through it befratis. Right, but even the Hadran on the Masechta, the Rebbe writes it's Korev Levadi that is from the Tzemach Tzedek. It's not.
Is also for Shtei Ganes or Gan Eden.
Yeah, I mentioned that in the beginning. Yeah. The Rebbe actually said another point that Tzemach Tzedek says here. It says here that Rabbi Yehuda says, what happens if the Tachtaim wants to fill up his entire field with earth? He says, what does that refer to? It says that means the earth is the atzlus of the person, as the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, the laziness. So what happens if a person fills it all up with earth, meaning that he's completely lazy? So then he can't eat the yerek and he can't derive the proper benefit that you need from this world with the proper purpose because the person's lazy. That's what it means to say. That's what it's referring to. Okay.